Recording in progress. Hi, welcome to Wednesday Wisdom with Emily Wardrop. This is Emily Wardrop from Drop the Word Life Coaching. We've got a lot going on in Drop the Word Life Coaching this week. So hang on tight. Let me tell you about a few things. So first of all, I'm very excited that tomorrow, which is actually yesterday, is that confusing? So I'm recording this on Monday, sending it on Wednesday, and on Tuesday, how's that for some clarification? There's a ginormous fly on my window. That's going to be very distracting. I should have let him out before I hit record. Okay. Tuesday, I'm so excited because Latter-day Life Coach podcast is featuring yours truly this week. So I will put the link to that in this email. You got to go check out my podcast. And if you haven't heard of Latter-day Life Coaches, it is a fantastic podcast to listen to week after week, not just this week while I'm on it. So all my friends are on there from the LDS Life Coach group, Latter-day Life Coaches. And they're all amazing. And every week there's amazing podcasts to listen to. So tap into that. What else? So we just got back from the Bahamas where we all got 3 little braids in our hair. Not all of us. My husband wouldn't let me do it to my son. He's got lots of hair. We have 5 girls, according to everyone that we met on this vacation. 9 trillion people were like, wow, 5 girls. I don't know how they can count, but they can't tell that he's in boy clothes. Anyway, everyone always assumes he's a girl because he has really long hair and because everyone else is a girl. A girl with boy clothes instead of a boy with long hair, whatever. Anyway, it's the context, right? The context with all the other girls, he just looks like another girl, but he's wearing like a Minecraft shirt or Mario Brother or whatever, which girls could be wearing too. Not the point. What's the point is that, he was even into it. He wanted to get braids, but daddy wasn't having it. Anyway, so we didn't actually get on the island in the Bahamas. Well, I did. I woke up very early while everyone else was asleep, and I went down to the island and I got my hair braided and I walked around and was like, I'm not bringing my family here. And so we didn't get off the island that day. The day before, we did get off where it's Royal Caribbean's private island. So we got off there and played at the water park. That was all fun. But they didn't actually get a cultural experience of the Bahamas at the tourist stop there. Someday. But currently we are a traveling circus. We were at Disney World with 3 strollers, Grandma, Uncle Devin, Dad, myself. We, every time we got on a bus, we had to get everything out of the stroller. So I was in charge of the stuff, Grandma was in charge of the kids, and Dad was in charge of the strollers. So he'd like fold up 3 strollers and hold them on the bus while I was like getting all the water bottles and the fans and the Minnie Mouse ears and all the things, right, packed up into bags, and I'm like holding all this stuff on the bus while Grandma's got like the millions of kids and all the comments. Wow, that's a lot of kids, blah blah blah. When you're in Utah, 5 kids doesn't seem like that many. Actually, we got a lot of comments in Salt Lake, but I assume that if you live maybe in Provo, Utah County, 5 kids is not a big deal. Anyway, in Florida, even at Disney World, where it's like for families and there was kids everywhere, there still apparently wasn't 5 kids in one family. We got a lot of comments. Anyway, it was a traveling circus. It was amazing. The kids did really well, and I did, can I just tell you, amazingly well. Perfect? Of course not, but I got to tell you, these months of preparation, believing that I am a good mom, really helped. So I wanted to share a Wednesday wisdom that came from the trip, something that I learned, something that I applied. Got to get real and raw up in here. But you know what? It was so recent that I still haven't even processed it. So all weekend, we got home on Friday. So Saturday and Sunday, I'm like, okay, what is this lesson learned from the vacation that I'm going to impart the wisdom on Wednesday? I'm like, yeah, I'm really getting nothing. So this morning I'm playing with my daughter. I got the kids off to school, which was a fiasco. They were in school for 2 weeks and then they were out of school for 2 weeks, and they woke up okay. Like there wasn't too much drama. Get them out of bed, get them dressed, get them down for breakfast. But without too many embarrassing details, someone was stuck in the bathroom for a very long time and wasn't finished when it was time to walk to school. And so I had to drive them to school, and they were tardy, and I had to walk them all to their classes, and someone's class wasn't even there. So then we had to figure out where they were. And all of that would have been no big deal, except that I was going to babysit the neighbor boy also. and and I was like, sure, that time works because the kids walked themselves to school. That time didn't work because they didn't walk themselves to school. Anyway, it all worked out. All that's like ancient history, the smart drama. But while I was babysitting the neighbor boy and playing with my girls that are still at home, 3 are at school, 2 are at home, the wisdom came to me through the mouth of Babes, my 3-year-old. So the neighbor boy does something, right? It was like no big deal, whatever it was. And then my 3-year-old goes, well, that just happened. And this is your wisdom, folks, for the week. Wisdom from the 3-year-old, which I got to take credit for her. She learned from her life coach mom. That just happened is a phrase that I use in my head and apparently out loud enough that she's picked it up. That keeps me from fighting with reality. Brene Brown says, when you fight with reality, you lose, but only every time. Pretty sure that's Brene Brown. So when you get frustrated, it's because there's a dissonance between your expectation and reality. Okay. All day long, you're frustrated because you expect your kids to get up when you tell them to. You expect them to put on their clothes when you tell them to. Maybe you ask them to. Maybe you expect them to eat their cereal and they didn't, but you dosed them for a whole bowl of cereal. Oh, P.S. That's another thing I was going to tell you about. Can I just tangent for a second? Drop the War Life Coaching is all about dropping power struggles with our littles, right? I like to coach moms of little kids. Officially, as of today, I'm niching down to coaching moms of kids with type 1 diabetes. So if that doesn't apply to you, don't worry. Your Wednesday wisdom will still be helpful. Maybe you have a grandkid with diabetes, since my mom and my mother-in-law subscribe to my email list and may or may not be watching this. Maybe you know someone who has kids that have type 1 diabetes. There's been a huge rise in type 1 diabetes since the pandemic, because this I learned when my daughter was first diagnosed. It's not anything like type 2, where it comes from, diet and exercise, right? Type 1, what happens is something attacks your pancreas and it stops working. So type 2 is like, because of diet and exercise lifestyle things, your pancreas is like struggling to produce insulin. So you can kind of help it out with diet and exercise type lifestyle changes, right? But type 1 is just sayonara pancreas. It doesn't work anymore. Something attacked the pancreas and it's out. It does not produce insulin anymore. And that something, in a lot of cases recently, apparently was COVID, because since the pandemic, there's been a huge uprise in type 1 diabetes. So it's the real deal. Being a mom's a real deal. Being the mom of toddlers is a real deal. And being the mom of toddlers with type 1 diabetes is a real deal. So luckily I had life coaching tools and have life coaching tools, and all day, every day I need to use those tools. And so I really want to give back to those who are struggling with managing their kids' diabetes without life coaching tools. I'm like, please, let me help you. Let me share this wisdom, right? So if you know anybody, please let them know that I'm focusing on that. And mostly it's for marketing, right? And so any of this content that I'm sending out may or may not talk about diabetes specifically. It doesn't matter. It's applicable to everyone, okay? Speaking of applicable to everyone, so where were we? Okay, you expect them to do things and they don't do it, and that leads to frustration, right? Because you're thinking things like, they should know how to put on their shoes. They should not have lost their shoes. They should have put their shoes in the mudroom when they got home, so that we would know where they are when it's time for school. Anything that has should in it is going to lead to frustration, because that's an expectation that doesn't match reality. So we're fighting with reality and we're losing every time. So the catchphrase wisdom this week, right, that my 3-year-old said, well, that just happened. So when I dose my daughter for a whole bowl of Cheerios and she eats like a scoopful and refuses to eat anymore, and I'm like, you're going to crash at school because you did not have the carb intake that I just told the little insulin pump that you were going to have. well, that just happened. And then I can compensate for it, find something else that she'll eat, whatever. But when I'm just frustrated about it and freaking out, then the action line is not as pretty, right? So when I think the circumstances that she didn't eat her whole bowl of cereal, I think, well, that just happened. Then I feel, this is why I bought a feeling wheel, people, because when I get to the feeling line sometimes, I'm like, what is that feeling called? Yeah. So versus I'm very familiar with the frustrated feeling when I think, oh, and so anyway, the point is that thinking, well, that just happened, drops the war with reality versus expectation. Okay. So we're dropping the war on the reality expectation gap. Okay. By thinking, well, that just happened. So the 3-year-old's little friend she was playing with did something she didn't like. And instead of freaking out, she goes, well, that just happened. It was the funniest thing. I was like, what? The 3-year-old just said that. And then she carried on playing with her thing. Like she just gave him back his model, right? She's like, okay, he's doing his thing and it doesn't have to affect me. And that is the goal, right? They're doing their thing and it doesn't have to affect us as much, right? So when you're finding the frustration, you might notice it in the feeling line, right? So you feel frustrated, then you can go back up in your model because this one's just going to happen. Like we don't have to, we drop the war with your current model. You're a human. You're going to think those thoughts. You're going to feel those feelings. So you feel frustrated. Then after the fact, like you've processed that frustration and then you want to go back and be like, oh, right. It's because I was expecting them to do whatever. I was expecting him to get out of bed as soon as I told him to, and he didn't. And I'm thinking he should have. So that's why I feel frustrated. So then when you go in there to wake him up again, you can be like, oh, well, this is happening. He's still in bed. What do I want to do about it now? From a more calm feeling. Okay, calm. Maybe that's the feeling I was trying to describe earlier. And then you take the actions that you want to be the mom that you want to be, right? Because we're just trying to pretend here and like be so kind and gentle and patient all day or all morning. Like the first 40 minutes of the day is where you're tested already, right? So you can't just pretend here. We got to get the thought feeling dialed in. And a go-to thought is, well, that just happened. So try that one on this week. Well, that just happened. And I'll tell you more about my vacation when I process, right? I don't know. I don't know what happened. It was a whirlwind, but I sure feel like a rock star for accomplishing it. We've been planning this vacation for 2 years. It was to celebrate my husband graduating with his master's degree in the year 2020. So the vacation didn't happen that year. And his mom retired that year. So it was supposed to be like this big celebration, a big deal. They graduated and she retired. That happens how often in your lifetime? Once. But before the plane even landed, we were talking about when are we doing this again? So I guess it's not a special occasion thing anymore. It's just a thing we do on the regular. So good thing it went well because we're doing it again. Anyway, that's your Wednesday wisdom for today. Make sure you check out the podcast episode. I feel very nervous during the podcast interview. So cut me some slack. I heard a soundbite of it today and I'm very processing some shame. I'm like, oh my gosh, I sound so dumb. It's all good. It's good content no matter how nervous I am. That's what I always say. So get past my spastasticness and just get the wisdom you need to get out of it and tap it on other days to hear how my other life coach friends impart their wisdom. It's always good stuff. All right. And if you know anybody who has kids with type 1 diabetes, I'm your coach. Because this little sweetie right here, that arm right there, got photoshopped out. Her little Dexcom thing on her arm. We had quite the little argument, me and my husband, about whether we should Photoshop that out or not. And now I guess he was right. We should have left it in because we're talking diabetes in here all the time now. So what else? She's not even smiling. I don't know how well you can see that, but that girl's got a grumpy face on. Anyway, she's the one with all the wisdom. Yeah, that happened. Yeah, that photographer did take that picture. All right. I'll hit stop. Okay. Talk to you next week. See you on the podcast. Oh, and speaking of podcasts, what? I'm getting closer and closer to producing my own. And it's going to be about managing yourself while you're managing your child with type 1 diabetes. So Be listening up, because you'll notice it now that I've mentioned it. You'll be meeting people everywhere that have kids that have diabetes. So whether they were diagnosed recently or a long time ago, whether they're toddlers or not, whatever it is, I'm all about coaching them. I don't have to have lived through it. I just need to pick their brain, right? So, okay. But I have lived through it. Some. I've had my experience of it times two. So I do have an idea of what they're going through, and it's the real deal. So need some coaching. I don't know how anybody can be a mom without a life coach, let alone a mom of kids with diabetes, let alone a mom of kids with autism. There's coaches about that. There's coaches who coach moms of kids with ADHD. All of them, lots of them are on the LDS, what do they call them? Latter-day Life Coach directory, and the Latter-day Life Coach podcast. So yeah, the podcast goes with the directory. So go to latterdaylifecoach.com, something like that is the directory where you can look for a life coach. So if you can't handle my spastasticness, but you're a little bit interested and you want a different life coach, everyone needs a coach, just like everyone needs a dentist. And, you know, everyone has their own preferences about which dentist they want to go to. There's a whole directory of amazing life coaches there. So I highly recommend all of them. We're all buds. Okay. I'm going to hit stop now for real. Anything else? Clearly, I did not get my words in this morning while I was playing with toddlers. Okay. I'll see you next week. Hey, if you have any questions, just reply to this email or hit me up on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. I'm on not all the socials, right? That's just 3 out of how many social platforms are there? Okay, for real now. All right. See you next week. Bye.